Welcome to another deep dive, everyone. This time we're traveling to Tokyo. Well, at least in our minds. We're diving into the world of Days at the Morisaki Bookshop, a novel set in the Jimbocho district. I've heard that's quite the book lover's paradise.
Oh, absolutely. Jimbocho is a real haven for bibliophiles, rows and rows of used bookstores. And Days at the Morisaki Bookshop, it's not your typical romance set in a bookshop, though. It explores how books can heal, bring people together, the whole idea of belonging.
Mhm.
Finding your harbor, you could say.
Love that idea of a harbor, especially because, well, our main character, Takako, she's not exactly anchored when the story begins, is she?
Not at all. I mean, picture this. Takako's boyfriend of 2 years, completely out of the blue, tells her he's getting married.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And to make matters worse, it turns out he's been seeing this other woman the entire time. Double whammy. Takako is devastated, quits her job, and basically shuts herself off from the world in her tiny Tokyo apartment. She's sleeping all the time, just to escape the pain.
Wow. Heartbreak, no job, escaping into sleep. That's rough. So when she's at this low point, something happens, right? Her uncle.
Right, just when things seem bleakest, she gets a letter from her uncle. This uncle, he's a bit of an eccentric character himself, runs a used bookshop in Jimbocho, the Morisaki Bookshop. He needs help, some health issues, and he offers Takako a place to stay above the shop.
A used bookshop, huh? Sounds like the perfect hideaway for someone who wants to get lost in stories. What's the bookshop like, though? Paint me a picture.
Okay, so imagine a small, two-story wooden building, a little musty. It's packed, crammed, with about 6,000 books, mostly modern Japanese literature. The novel describes it as this place where time seems to stand still. A real throwback.
Okay, I'm sold. I need to book a flight to Tokyo. So back to Takako. She's dropped into this book-filled world. How does she react?
At first, complete overwhelm. It's just mountains of books, the slow pace of life, so different from what she's used to. And honestly, her old habits, they stick around. She's still sleeping a lot at first, using it to cope.
Makes sense. She's carrying a lot of emotional weight. So how does she start to, I don't know, wake up from this self-imposed hibernation?
There's this one moment, a real turning point. She's reading Landscapes of the Heart by Motojiro Kaji. And she comes across a passage that's underlined. Some previous reader, they underlined it. And that simple act of connection, seeing someone else's thoughts, feelings marked on the page, it reawakens something in her.
It is amazing how such a small thing can have that kind of impact. It's like a message in a bottle, a sign that you're not alone in how you feel. Books aren't just words, they're shared human experiences.
Exactly. That's when Takako truly dives into the world of books, one after another, just absorbing these stories, the history, and she loves the personal touches left behind. Pressed flowers, underlined passages, notes in the margins. It's like these whispers from the past.
She's finding comfort, solace in the books themselves. But what about the world outside the shop? Jimbocho, it sounds like a special place in itself.
It is. As Takako ventures out, she discovers this vibrant community. Booksellers, coffee shops, all these interesting people. It's not just buying and selling books, it's this whole ecosystem. Her uncle explains how it works, this network of sellers and auctions. They're keeping the secondhand book trade alive, fighting against the big chains.
A community battling to preserve something they love. I like that. But where does Takako fit into this? Is she just watching from the sidelines, or does she become a part of this world?
Oh, she becomes a part of it, definitely. She forms this great friendship with Tomo, a waitress at a charming little coffee shop, Sander. It's been around for 50 years, this place. Takako even ends up playing matchmaker for Tomo and this shy guy, Tsukano, who hangs out at the bookshop a lot.
It's like she's slowly opening herself up to new connections. And wasn't there something about a big event that brings this whole community together?
Yes, the Kanda Used Book Festival. Every year, for a whole week, the streets are transformed into this gigantic outdoor book market. People everywhere celebrating books, reading. Takako gets swept up in it all. She's with Tomo and Takano. They're sharing in the excitement of finding new books. And she actually says she feels genuinely happy for the first time since the breakup.
The festival sounds amazing. I can just picture it. But I have a feeling there are more surprises in store, right? What happens next? Okay, so Takako's starting to heal, connecting with the books, the community. But I have a feeling things are about to get interesting. You mentioned something about the uncle's ex-wife.
Oh yeah, Momoko. Her coming back after 5 years, it throws everything off. Like a blast from the past, everyone's a bit rattled.
5 years is a long time. Why'd she leave in the first place?
Well, that's where the novel digs deeper into, I guess, love and loss. Turns out Momoko left because she couldn't deal with losing their child. Their child died in Paris. It really shows how grief, how it can hit people in different ways, even drive people apart.
So sad. To think something so tragic could end a marriage. And how does Momoko's return, how does it affect Takako?
Momoko, she kind of takes to Takako,
Mm.
which is interesting because they're so different personality-wise. Momoko, she's got this energy, she's fit, seems carefree. And Takako's, well, she's still working through her own stuff.
Seems like an unlikely pairing. What happens next?
Well, Momoko, maybe she sees something in Takako, I don't know. But she invites her on this mountain retreat.
A mountain retreat. Wow. That's bold. Considering how different they are, sounds like a recipe for disaster. Did they even get along?
The hiking, all the physical challenges, it definitely showed how different they were. Takako had trouble keeping up with Momoko. But it's in those quieter moments, surrounded by nature, when Momoko finally opens up about the past.
So the retreat, it becomes more than just a physical journey, huh? It's an emotional one, too. What happens when Momoko tells the truth about why she left?
It's a huge turning point for both of them. You see Momoko's vulnerability, and Takako realizes that under Momoko's happy exterior, there's this deep sadness. It makes Takako face her own feelings about the breakup, all that anger, the grief she's been holding back.
Like, they both have these hidden wounds. And the retreat, the challenges, it brings those wounds to the surface. Is there a moment, a specific moment, when this vulnerability comes out?
There's a scene in the bathhouse, really unexpected and moving. Takako, she's just overwhelmed by Momoko's story, and she hugs her. Just hugs her. It's more powerful than words, you know? Real comfort, understanding.
Beautiful image, says so much about human touch, being there for someone in their pain. Does this shared moment, does it change things between them?
Creates a real bond between them, yeah. But the trip, ultimately, it leads Momoko to make a tough choice. She realizes she needs to move on, find her own way away from everything in Jimbocho. So she leaves again. But this time, it's more like a choice, a step towards healing, not running away.
It sounds like both of them gained something from this journey, even though it ended in another separation. How does Takako deal with Momoko leaving again?
Well, she comes back to Tokyo feeling lighter, some of her own weight lifted. But then she gets this message from her ex, Hideaki, and it brings back all the pain of his betrayal. She realizes she can't just ignore it anymore.
So another emotional hurdle. How does she deal with these old wounds resurfacing?
This is where you see how much Takako has grown. Instead of blaming herself falling apart, she confronts Hideaki. And not with tears, but anger. She refuses to let him downplay what he did, how much he hurt her.
It's great that she finds her voice. Do you think those moments with Momoko, that shared vulnerability, helped her find that strength?
I think so, yeah. The retreat, it forced her to face her own emotions. And that self-awareness, it gave her the courage to stand up for herself. And you see the contrast between Hideaki, dismissive, and her uncle. So supportive.
It says a lot, doesn't it? About relationships that hurt us and those that help us grow. So after this confrontation, does Takako stay at the bookshop?
She actually makes a big decision. She decides it's time to move on from the bookshop. Finds a new place, a new job. It's like she's ready for the future. She doesn't need the shelter of the bookshop anymore. Doesn't need to hold on to her old life.
Bittersweet, right. The bookshop, it gave her solace, healing. Now she's strong enough to go out on her own. How does it show her leaving?
There's this beautiful scene. She takes one last look at the Morisaki Bookshop, waves goodbye to her uncle, shows how strong their bond is, even as she moves on.
Feel like a fitting end to her time at the shop. But I can't imagine the story just stops there. What about the others? What happens to them? Takako's moved on, new chapter. But the others, did we get to see what happened to them after Takako left the Morisaki Bookshop?
We do, yeah. A few months later, Momoko, she's back at the bookshop.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe for good this time. Remember Wada, quiet guy from that coffee shop?
Uh-huh.
He and Takako start dating. And Tomo and Takano, their romance, it's blossoming.
It's like the bookshop. It had this ripple effect, touching everyone who came through its doors. Do you think the author, was she trying to say something about how they shape our lives?
I think that's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
The bookshop, it's more than just a setting. It's like a character itself, pushing change, connection.
Hmm.
Oh, and speaking of change, remember Hideaki, Takako's ex.
How could I forget? Tell me he got what was coming to him.
Let's just say karma. Takako runs into his fiancée and finds out, guess what? He's still playing the field, trying to juggle multiple relationships.
Almost makes you feel good, doesn't it? Not that anyone wants to see anyone get hurt, but it's like justice.
It shows that actions have consequences, right? Honesty, respect, they're the foundation of any good relationship. But the story, it doesn't end there. The novel ends with Takako, she's visiting the bookshop, present day, She sees everything, the customers, hears the sounds. She thinks about how much her time there changed her.
That full circle moment, it's powerful. Even when we move on, the places that shape us, they stay with us, become part of our story. What do you think the author wants us to take from this last scene?
I think it's about, I don't know, celebrating places like the Morisaki Bookshop. They're not just buildings. They hold memories, connections, shared passions. They give us a sense of, I guess, continuity in a world that's always changing.
So, as we wrap up our deep dive into Days at the Morisaki Bookshop, what are some of the things that stuck with you? Key takeaways.
The book, it shows the healing power of books so well. Reminds us that stories, they can give us comfort, escape, even help us figure out life's challenges. And it shows how important human connection is, how our lives intertwine in ways we don't expect.
For me, it's that idea of finding our harbors, the places, the communities, the things we're passionate about. They give us a sense of belonging, purpose. Sometimes we need to find shelter in those harbors, and sometimes they give us the strength to go out on our own.
That's a great way to put it. And maybe, for you listening, this deep dive has made you wonder, what are your harbors? Where do you find comfort, connection? Have books or maybe other forms of art helped you on your journey?
We'd love to hear your thoughts. Share with us. Tell us about the books and places that have touched your life. Thanks for joining us on this adventure.